Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another reading of Children of the Archbishop. Listen with Vobes, with me, Richard Vobes, on the 19th of whatever it is, January 2021. Hello, hope you're all well and that you can hear me and see me and all of those exciting things together. As ever, I have got my ginger and lemon. It seems to be a ritual now that I have this homemade brew. Going to look at other sort of ones. I know you can buy the stuff, but as things come in season, going to see what, like somebody suggested rose hip was quite nice. So I'm going to try and get some real rose hips, the hips of a rose. Anyway, welcome along. Nice to see you all. Hope you're all doing well. Let's see who's out there, shall we? The lovely Julia is there. Turbo Stream, Holly and Co. We have Michael White, Ed Loud, Billabong O'Neill, who says, "Afternoon, everyone. Enjoyed this morning's trip to Scotland." Oh yes, you mean from the video that I did? Yes, and that was a bizarre old time, I can tell you. My mates, I don't know why they bottled out, but there you are. Who else have we got there? Philip Hammond and Mary, nice to see you. Witchfinder General, good afternoon. Mike Stevens, very nice to see you. Who says, "Good afternoon, gentlefolk. Just enjoying cheese and broccoli toasted pasty with baked beans." And Turbo Stream says, "I enjoyed Richard's trip to Scotland too. He reminded me of my dad and his multi-lift printing machine." Yes, I think I said something like 1280 because I meant 1250. I suddenly remembered later on I meant a 1250. It was only a small. It was like the one up from the desk thing, but it was on a proper, standalone thing. We did the parish mag on it and all sorts of stupid things. It was only A4. I think you could do a little bit bigger than A4, but not much. You couldn't do SRA2 or A3. I wonder if you could do A3. Maybe you could do A3. I don't think we did much A3, if I remember rightly. Anyway, the Green Man is there also. And Nootka Seaglass. Hi, everyone. First LW. Oh, listen with Vobes. I've managed to catch. I need some comfort this afternoon after traumatic task of washing my car. Why? Surely washing the car, not that traumatic, but maybe it was that filthy. I've got to wash my van, actually. Though I haven't been out very far, many places, so this week it scraped by without a wash. Shush, don't tell anyone. Green Man, I said. Lovely Julia says, "Afternoon. Hot drinks." Yes, that's what we need. Audrey Forbes, hello to you. Dave over yonder. Billabong O'Neill, who also worked at a printer's developing plates. All good fun, apart from your hands getting stuff in all that bromide that they used to use, and the fixer. That fixer stuff, that was horrible, whatever it's called now. Steve G is also there. Cooper68, the Petworth Posse. Hello to you. And Justine Jones, Ed Loud, I've said, and Mike Stevens, very yummy, blah, 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 blah. You should try sourdough tea. Never heard of it. Sourdough tea? That's looking good. Right. So where were we? We are slowly getting towards the end. Oh, yes, that's right. Book 5, The Runaways. And Ed Moulding, hello to you, Ed Moulding. "It was filthy mud an inch thick. I need a servant." Oh, yes, well, we all need servants, don't we? I'm just going to get rid of this. By the way, Nootka Sea Glass, I have been having those herbal teas and those powders that you sent me. Although I've just been having them after meals in water, sloshed up, rather than in orange juice. I don't have any orange juice. They don't sell it in the supermarket near me. They do, but I just have it with water. It hasn't killed me yet. Anyway, Lee Lawson's arrived, so we can carry on. Marvellous. Right. So although it's book 5, called The Runaways, this is chapter 45. When Ginger left Dr. Trump, he was fed up. The job he was going to sounded rotten. He didn't want to chop up bits of meat for people. He wanted to do something with cars, wanted to drive cars and tend them and cherish them. If it had been a garage he'd been sent to, he would have volunteered to go off at that same evening. It was his new enthusiasm, cars. It was all embracing. And he was still wondering whether he had to go on being a butcher forever, or whether the police, whoever it was who decided, would let him work in a garage if he wanted to, and he was wondering that when he saw Annie approaching. She was wearing the stupidest of all expressions, the one that showed that she had a secret and important news, and she made straight for Ginger. "Sweetie wants you," she said. "She's down the end of the kitchen garden, and if you get onto the wall, she can talk to you." Get on the wall? It was all right for Annie to talk like that. Getting on the wall in broad daylight was madness. He'd get caught and caned for it. And then he remembered. He couldn't be caned any longer, at least not after tomorrow he couldn't. "What's she want?" he asked. "It's something bad," Annie told him. "She's crying." "Oh, all right," Ginger answered resignedly. "I'll go and see." Mr. Dawlish blew his whistle for all indoors just as Ginger was setting out, but he didn't take any notice. He kept straight on, past the woodwork shop, past the boiler room, and on towards the gardener's shed. His favourite plane tree stood there, and even though the lower branch, the useful one, had been sawn off on Dr. Trump's orders, he could still manage the climb. That was where the leather belt of the hospital uniform came in so handy. It could always be used for pulling yourself up in an emergency. When he reached the top of the wall, Sweetie was waiting there sure enough. And he could see that at once she had been crying. Her upturned face showed up plainly enough, and all was tear-stained and blotchy. "What's the matter with you?" he asked. "I'm glad you've come," Sweetie answered. "Yeah, but what's the matter?" he persisted. "I wanted to say goodbye," she told him. "How'd you know I was going?" he demanded. "No, it's not you. It's me," Sweetie said with a break in her voice. I'm being sent away tomorrow." "Where to?" To a job," Sweetie answered. "And I shan't see you again. Or Margaret. I shan't see anyone I know." Ginger paused. "That's rotten," he said at last. Sweetie was staring up at him, pleadingly. "I thought perhaps you could help me." "Can't," Ginger told her. "Being sent off myself tomorrow." It was this piece of news that was too much for Sweetie. She just laid her head upon her arm up against the brickwork of the wall and began crying again. Then, quite abruptly, she stopped. "I won't go," she said slowly. "I'll kill myself." Ginger was aware of a strange emotion inside him. He'd never seen another human being quite so distressed before. Certainly he'd never seen a girl like that. And he wanted to jump down off the wall and put his arms around her. But it was too late. Already, through the gathering dusk, he could hear Nurse Stedge calling. Her voice was shrill and anxious sounding. "Sweetie," it was saying. "Sweetie, are you there? The bell's gone, Sweetie. Sweetie! Sweetie!" "Goodbye," said Ginger. There was no answer at first. Then Sweetie spoke slowly and deliberately. "Goodbye," she said. "Goodbye forever. I shall be dead by morning." That's a bit grim, isn't it? That's a bit grim. Come to the end of that part. We had to see Sensible Paul has arrived. Michael White has also come in. Linda Kane, nice to see you. Andrew Norris, what ho. What else we've got? That sounds fab. I love corvids, not COVID, of course. Such fascinating birds. Linda Kane, thanks for the welcome back. Decided to return. Otherwise, I may have gone completely round the bend. Bit concerned about my sister, but good news today. Phew. Oh, good. Well done. I'm pleased to hear it, Linda. Nice to have you back. There we go. Look at that. We're all one happy family again. Please, please, please don't anybody desert us again. We all get so worried when people just suddenly vanish. It's no... I mean, if I suddenly did that, well, you'd have to amuse yourselves, wouldn't you? Anyway, right. We're on part 2. Part 2. Ginger had not been asleep for more than half an hour when he woke suddenly. Really suddenly. So suddenly indeed that he sat bolt upright in bed in one jerk. He was being soft. That's what he was being. For the last couple of years he'd told himself that he was going to run away, and here he was just waiting to be kicked around. That wasn't good enough. He wasn't going to stop there any longer. He'd run away good and proper this time, somewhere right away where Dr. Trump and the Hoxton butcher and the police would never find him, and he'd be able to get on all right. He wasn't worrying. But money, that was the first problem. The trouble was he hadn't got any, and that 2-day jaunt to Poplar had taught him that the cost of things outside the hospital were a lot. Then he remembered the half-crown that Canon Mallow had given him, the one that Dr. Trump had taken away. Even if he had that, everything would be all right. And why shouldn't he have it? He asked himself. It was his, wasn't it? It had belonged to him, and he reckoned that he could get at it once again if he tried properly. No difficulty there. It was only a wooden box with a padlock on it, and if the padlock wouldn't give way, he could prise it open, bust up the hinges, and get at his half-crown that way. I'm going to do it, he resolved. Get me half-crown and clear out for good. When he'd put on the last of his climbing clothes, he paused a moment to look around the sleeping dormitory. Bet Spud won't half be sick when he wakes up in the morning and finds me gone, he reflected. But he won't be half sick. Oh, sorry, but he won't be half sick. Sorry, sometimes the words jump about and you just go, I can't read it. But getting at the half-crown wasn't as easy as he'd anticipated. For a start, the hospital collecting box was in the open corridor leading to the hall, and, even in the dead of night, it seemed a pretty public sort of place in which to go rifling a treasure chest. The box, too, was a strong one, and the padlock had been made specially to prevent the sort of thing that Ginger was up to. There was nothing for it, eventually, but to break the hinges, and he had to use a poker out of the big fireplace in the entrance hall before he could make them even budge. But when they did go, they went abruptly, and with a bang. They made so much noise, indeed, as the thick iron bands came clean out of the woodwork, that Ginger was afraid the whole hospital would wake up. He just stood there waiting while his heart went dub-dub, 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 dub-dub inside him. The real difficulty came, however, when he looked inside the box. It contained 3 separate shillings and a piece of silver paper. That was awkward. If he took only 2 of the shillings, that would leave Dr. Trump with 6pence that wasn't his by rights. And if he took all 3 of the shillings, that would be stealing. But in the end he decided that for the moment he needed the odd 6pence more than Dr. Trump did. I'll only borrow it, he told himself. I'm not going to keep it. When I get a job, I'll post it back again. I'll pay for smashing up the box when I get a job. I'm only taking mine by rights. And then suddenly Ginger remembered Sweetie. It seemed rotten going off like this without even saying goodbye to her. That was my sister. I'll ring her back. He's probably ringing up about the house, probably drunk on champagne or something. Just out the house. At least I hope that's what it is, and that it hasn't fallen through. You can imagine that would be something that would happen in a Norman Collins novel. Anyway, let me just check to see if there are any impending emails that I need to suddenly just quickly look at. Bear with me, caller. Just looking. No, I've had nothing from the solicitor, nothing from the estate agent saying, no, they've pulled out. And even if they pull out, they lose their deposit. So it's quite nice if they pull out. We put it back on the market again. We've made a bit of money. We can tart it all up, put it up for a bit more. I'll ring her a bit later. Anyway, so suddenly Ginger remembered Sweetie. It seemed rotten going off like this without even saying goodbye. There was nothing, however, he could do about it. He didn't even know which was Sweetie's dormitory any longer. But she was a soppy sort of kid, he remembered. She'd probably been back at her place on the wall waiting for him since the lights were out. And even if she weren't, he'd feel better about it somehow if he just went and had a look. That's leaving a message. But he went and had a look. Where I've lost my space. She'd probably been back at her place. Yeah, he went and have a look. The 3 shillings safely in his pocket, he therefore started off round the Collet block for a final check on Sweetie's stupidity. He was still wondering whether he weren't just being as stupid about it himself when he heard a noise, a half hiss, a half whistle just above him. He started, and then he looked up, and there was Sweetie already on the wall. I thought you'd come, she said in a whisper when he got nearer. Did you? He asked lamely. I was sure of it, Sweetie answered. Why are you wearing those clothes? I'm running away, he told her. For good this time. I just come to say goodbye. That was nice of you, Sweetie said. I'm glad you came because I wanted you to do something for me. Did you? Ginger whispered back. What was it? There was a pause. Only a slight one, but it was enough to warn Ginger that something important was coming. I wanted you to take me with you, Sweetie answered. Then Ginger regretted that he had ever come at all. It showed that Sweetie was really balmy. Only someone as balmy as Sweetie would ever have suggested it. You can't, he said firmly. You're a girl. But Sweetie didn't seem to be impressed. If you don't take me, I'll scream, she threatened. I'll scream so loud that everyone hears. Then they'll find both of us. I will, if you don't take me. She wet her forefinger and drew it across her throat as she was speaking. Ginger didn't like the look of that. It meant that Sweetie was in earnest. And I'll start screaming when I've counted 3, she went on. Go on, Ginger. 1. I won't be any trouble. 2. Please, Ginger, will you take me? 3. All right, said Ginger. Come on. He was now in a mess. A real mess. He'd be copped for certain if he had a girl tagging along with him. And what's more, he just remembered he hadn't got any plans, any real plans, even for himself. What you going to wear? Ginger asked when Sweetie came slithering down off the wall and was actually standing there beside him. What I've got on, Sweetie answered. Ginger looked. It was the regulation uniform of the hospital that Sweetie was wearing. Too recognisable, he said briefly. Then he began to think. There was only one pair of flannel trousers in the whole hospital, and he had got them on. But there was a blue boiler suit that Sergeant Chiswick used when he was doing the stoking. It was a bit on the large size, but Ginger reckoned that he could manage with it, and it would look businesslike too when he came to go after his job. You wait here, he said. Politely, he turned his back on as she changed. The only thing that upset him was Sweetie's hair. It was soft and shiny and wavy, obviously girl's hair. So as long as Sweetie looked like that, he need not have troubled about the flannel trousers, so there was nothing for it, therefore, to give up his cap as well. He resented that. The cap was part of his running away costume, and he felt incomplete without it. But there was no other way. "You put this on," he said, "and shove all your hair right up into it. Don't leave any bits showing." "I won't," said Sweetie. Ginger came close to her and inspected her. She looked better that way, much better. "Now, you shut up and do what I tell you," he commanded. "I will, Ginger," she promised quietly. Having got her own way, she was now meek, obedient, even humble. It was a dark night, and there was not much fear of meeting anyone in the courtyard. Ginger therefore took the quick route back across Collet and down towards the laundry. There was no point climbing down the drain pipes when you could just open a gate by pulling the bolts back. Half a minute later, the two of them were standing in Rycroft Gardens, free. Ooh, quick slurps. It's all very exciting, isn't it? It's all very exciting. I'm just going to text my sister and say I'll ring her back in. Oh, hang on. There's a text. What does it say here? Oh, yes. I have already done mine again yesterday. No problem. Sorry about this. Slight moment of realism. You know what solicitors are? They're just rubbish, aren't they, really? At the end of the day, we were told to give our bank details. We gave our bank details ages ago. House was on the market for ages and ages, and now it's actually happened. And we have exchanged contracts, and tomorrow will be the completion. And yes, on Friday they sent me a note saying, "Can you just give us your bank details? Do you want a 50-50 split or whatever?" And I said, "No, send all the money to me, and I'll meet you in the south of France." And apparently you can't travel, so I said, "Oh, I better give my sister half then." So she's just giving me a thumbs up. So they sent, do the bank details again. So I just did the bank details, no problem, done that, bang. And of course my sister's saying, "Oh, but we've already been asked to do it." It's like, yeah, but just do it again. It's not a problem. Business before pleasure, indeed. Sorry about that. Right, where were we? This is part 3. There aren't many people about at 3 o'clock in the morning. Cities are as dead as tombs at that time of night. The streets might be riverbeds on the moon, and the buildings are just so many rock faces, blank, cold, and unseeing. Sweetie had taken Ginger's hand by now, and the two of them walked on together, not even talking. The main problem was Ginger's. He still hadn't got any idea of where they were going. It was the coffee stall at Hammersmith that gave him his first idea. "You leave this to me," he said, and, in as loud a voice as he could manage, he gave the order. 2 cups coffee," he said, "and a piece of cake." He gave the pieces of cake to Sweetie, shrugging his shoulders as he did so. "I'm not hungry," he said. It was true, but he had got his eye on those 3 shillings. He knew the way money goes, even as much as 3 shillings, if you don't look after it. While they were sipping their coffee, a lorry drew up. It was a big lorry with a row of double wheels at the side and a thing like a caravan hitched on behind. When the driver climbed down from the driving seat, it was like a man getting out of a first... It's like Piccadilly Circus here. I don't know who that is. Oh, well, that's probably the solicitors. Probably ringing me now. It's all go, isn't it? I'll ring them back. They might leave a message. I'll ring them back. We're in the middle of blooming... I could put the phone on silent, I suppose, but it's just like, you know, we're at this tenterhook moment. Anyway. So, yes, it was like getting out of a multi-storey car park or something, I was going to say. When the driver climbed down from the driving seat, it was like a man getting out of the first story of window. Ginger stood there for some time, admiring both the lorry and its driver. Then he happened to overhear what the lorry driver and the coffee stall proprietor were talking about. She's just left a message. The lorry driver seemed to be called Dave, and the conversation was about someone who lived up in Doncaster. When the coffee stall proprietor asked to be remembered to him, that was the clue for which Ginger had been waiting. It meant that the lorry driver was going off to Doncaster, and it meant that Doncaster was where he and Sweetie were going too. "Give us a lift, Gov," he said, just as the lorry driver was preparing to mount into the first story of his driving cab. The lorry driver scarcely paused. He was used to these pickups at the all-night coffee stalls, and he was suspicious of them. They usually spelt trouble, and he had no patience with people who just wanted to go anywhere. So he tried his stock question. "Where do you want to go to, son?" he asked. "Doncaster," Ginger told him, adding in the sort of voice that clinches things, "My mate lives there." "OK," he said. "Get in, but no monkey business. If there's any monkey business, I puts you out, see? Puts you out wherever you are, see?" "I see," said Ginger, and motioned to Sweetie for her to climb in. Then he restrained himself. On the whole, he reckoned that it would be better if Sweetie didn't sit next to the driver. He'd just noticed Sweetie's hands. It was the same trouble with her hair. They were so obviously girls' hands. Looking back on it afterwards, Ginger couldn't remember anything that he had ever enjoyed more than that all-night drive. He enjoyed it so much, in fact, that he kept forgetting that there was anything else that mattered, kept forgetting that he was running away at all. The driving cab itself was so fascinating that it satisfied him completely. There was a speedometer with a little light just above it, an amp meter and a radiator thermometer. Oh my goodness, it's going bonkers. You'll have to excuse me, I better just find out what this is. I will return. Hello? Yes. Don't worry. Yes, I thought it might be. Hello? Oh, yes. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Well, do you want me to read it to you? Go on then. Yes. Correct. Yes. That's right. That's okay. Yeah, that's fine. It's all safe doing it that way, isn't it? Fantastic. Thank you very much. The keys I've left with the estate agent. Okay, brilliant. Okay, Dad. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. I do apologise for that, ladies and gentlemen. It was a solicitor. They just wanted to check the bank details because it's obviously it's £5.50 going in there, and they wanted to make sure they got all the numbers in the correct order, because if obviously you give them the wrong number, somebody somewhere will be going, "Oh, I've got £5.50 in my account all of a sudden." So anyway, that's done. They're going to ring me tomorrow and let me know. Oh, yes, it must be hard to concentrate, because if I didn't answer that phone, that was the house phone. The first one was my mobile, which they've left a message for. Otherwise, they'd be banging on the door, or they'll pop up in the chat room. I mean, you know, there are many ways to contact me. So sorry about that. It's all a bit silly, isn't it? Right, where are we? Yes. Okay, so he was looking at... That's right. There was a speedometer with a little light just over it, an amp meter and a radiator thermometer. It was best when Dave changed down to third. Then the engine sent vibrations like electric shocks all up his spine. Merely to be perched up there on the slab cushions was to have the sensation of privilege and purpose and effortless, inexhaustible power. And it was even better outside. Dave had wormed his way through London at last. He had left the lampposts and the traffic lamps behind, and he was cruising down the main channel of the Great North Road. Oh, the old A1, eh? This was the real stuff, it was. They were now alone. Behind them lay London, all tucked in and sleeping, and in front was blackness, plain, inky blackness. It might have been a journey into outer space that they were going, a trip into the heart of night itself. The lorry was all that mattered now. Inside it was noisy, warm and rather fumy. Outside was simply rushing ebony air. The speedometer showed 35, 40, 45. Not that Dave was taking things too hard. There were no grand endurance tests about his style of driving. He got something wrong with his stomach, he confided. It was the sort of stomach that needed a lot of food, and it needed it often. That was why he kept stopping. And his stomach seemed to know all the right places on the way. Charlie's Bar, Eddie's Pull-Up, Cosy Cafe, the all-night tea rooms, and Sandy's. The lorry drew up automatically at all of these. Ginger was only sorry that Sweetie was missing it all, but she didn't seem to mind. She was fast asleep whenever he went to look at her. Had gone to sleep on his shoulder almost as soon as they'd started, in fact. In the end, indeed, the very placidness of her sleeping got on his nerves, rather. He looked down at her, all crumpled up on that slab cushion of the driving cab, with his cap pulled down over her ears, and he pondered. She's taking it pretty calmly, I must say, he reflected, resentfully, just like a girl leaving it all to a fella. She's taking it calmly, all right. Ginger must have dozed off for a bit himself, because when he woke it wasn't dark any longer, not really inky stuff. There was now a slate grey light over everything, and he could see hedges and haystacks and the telegraph poles alongside them. Sweetie woke up too. "Where are we?" she asked. Her voice sounded more than ever like a girl's, and Ginger was worried. But Dave didn't seem to notice that there was anything wrong. "Can't you see?" he asked. "We're nearly there. Put your darn inside the half hour." Oh, this was Dave, yeah. Can't you see? Just then Dave was putting them down. Sweetie spoilt everything. "Where's Doncaster?" she asked. That made the driver suspicious. "I thought you said he lived here," he remarked. "So he does," Ginger said. "He's forgetting." "Says you," the driver answered. "I could tell you were on the run as soon as I saw you." He brought the lorry to a standstill as he said it. "Now, you hop it, both of you. I don't want to get mixed up with no funny stuff, see? Take care of Sissy." The driver pursed his lips as he said it and made a rude sort of noise. That rather upset Ginger. It seemed a pity that such a nice, friendly man would have turned so unpleasant at the end of it. But he soon stopped worrying. The one thing that mattered was that he and Sweetie had got there, and that nobody knew where they were. End of that part. Sorry, what's that? Is that another message? Nope. Sorry about all these messages and things. It's far too much to cope with, isn't it? Maybe when he has the money in his pocket, he'll be in the van and you won't see him for dust, says Linda Kane. Who are we talking about there? Thank you. It was all too early to start looking for a job straight away, and Ginger and Sweetie spent the next half hour or so hunting for a place to get breakfast. But it was too early even for breakfast. There was nothing for it, therefore, but to walk up and down the streets. They had one piece of luck, however, right under their feet too, in fact. Ginger nearly stepped on it. He saw something just lying there and went to pick it up. It wasn't anything very much, just a gilt shamrock brooch with a single word, Mother, on the scroll across the bottom. But it was good luck finding it. Ginger cleaned it on his sleeve and examined it carefully. "It's gold, I reckon," he said, when he had completed his examination. "Oh, then we ought to give it to the police," Sweetie told him. "Gold's valuable." Ginger looked at her contemptuously. "Don't be potty," he said. "I ain't going near no policeman." He put the brooch in his pocket, and they walked on side by side in silence. When they reached the next street, however, Ginger took the brooch out again. The pin on the back needed straightening, and Ginger used his teeth on it. Then, when the brooch was wearable, he passed it over to Sweetie. "You can have it," he told her. "If anyone asks, say it was a present. Then they can't arrest you, see?" Thank you very much," said Sweetie. She was still thanking him when, for the second time, she nearly ruined everything. Just as they were passing the station, she tugged at his arm. "I want to be excused," she said. It was only at the last moment that Ginger realised what she was doing. She was making for the ladies. He darted after her. You can't go in there," he said. You can't go, and you can't go in my side either. You got to wait." But then he relented. "Give me my cap and shake your hair out," he said. "Then you'll look more like a girl. And don't forget to put it on again. It's a boy and a girl people are looking for. That's why we've got to be two boys when we're together, so they won't suspect nothing." "I'll remember," Sweetie promised. While she was away, Ginger stood there biting his lip. "I knew it would be harder bringing a girl along," he told himself. "I knew it was potty." They had breakfast at an open bar by the bus stop. Then they walked round Doncaster until after lunchtime. It was tiring, just walking, and Sweetie began to lag behind a bit. Once or twice she took hold of his hand and as she walked beside him, but Ginger shook it off again. It would look balmy, two boys going round hand in hand. People would guess at once that there was something wrong. And there was that old trouble about feeling hungry. It kept coming over him in little waves of sheer emptiness. Their tour of the city had taken them longer than he'd realised. It was nearly 3 o'clock already, and when he could stand the feeling of emptiness no longer, he turned to Sweetie. "Like something to eat?" he asked. "Whenever you feel like it," Sweetie answered. Going into a small shop, he bought some buns and a bottle of lemonade, and they sat on the canal bank. It really couldn't have been nicer, Sweetie thought, sitting there with Ginger close beside her, and their toes almost in the water. It was only the smell of the place that spoiled it. There was a factory just behind them that did tanning or something, and to be comfortable you had to keep your nose away from the direction the smell came from. But the buns and the lemonade made them feel much better. When they'd finished, Ginger bunged up the neck of the lemonade bottle with some old newspaper to make it watertight, and then threw it into the canal. Then they threw the stones at it until it sank. And as soon as they got going again, their luck changed. It was Sweetie who noticed "Boy Wanted" over a door in a side street. There wasn't anything to say what he was wanted for, and it didn't look much of a business. It seemed to deal in broken up boxes, mostly, but it was a job. And while Sweetie waited outside, Ginger went into the shop. He got the job almost immediately. 15 shillings a week it was, and nothing to it. All he had to do was pick up the bits of wood that had been chopped up and tie them in pieces of tarred twine into bundles for firewood. It astonished him that anyone should really be paid for doing anything so easy, and he reckoned that if he showed himself good at it, he'd get promoted. He'd be on the chopping next. He had to go outside again to say a word to Sweetie. "You just hang around," he said importantly. "I've got a job, got to start straight away. Meet you at 7. Sweetie smiled. "I told you to find one," she said. "You go in and do it. I'll be back." "You'll be all right?" he asked suddenly. "Course I'll be all right," she told him. "Well, take this, but don't spend it." He put his hand into his pockets and gave her one of the 2 remaining shillings. "Just in case you need it," he added uneasily. It wasn't a bad sort of place to work. They gave him a mug of tea when the others had it, but they certainly kept him at it. He was supposed to tie 2 bundles a minute. That was what the man said, and it took a bit of doing. He got up to 100 an hour, and there he stuck. All the same, he tied more than 300 bundles by the time 7 o'clock came round. "What time tomorrow, sir?" he asked. 8 o'clock, the man told him, "and sharp at it, lad." He spoke in a thick Doncaster sort of voice, with a bit of a rasp in it that made it difficult to understand. But up here everyone seemed to talk like that. It was being so far from London that did it, Ginger reckoned. And then Ginger put in another question. "Please, sir, when do I get paid?" That seemed to startle the man. When Ginger had finished, he said, and rightly speaking, he added. When Ginger had finished, he said, and rightly speaking, he added he hadn't got properly started yet. That afternoon, they were merely trying him. But the job was good for Ginger to start. The job was too good for Ginger to start arguing about. He just said, "OK, sir," and started off to look for Sweetie. Provided they didn't eat too much, they'd be all right until payday. And after that, there'd be nothing more to worry about. They'd get a proper room. Then, as soon as the police had stopped looking for them, Sweetie could get a job of her own, the right kind of job, a girl's job. As soon as he saw Sweetie, he knew that she'd been up to something. She was leaning against the lamp-post and smiling. And when Ginger came up to her, she reached into the pocket of her trousers, Ginger's trousers, and took out a paper packet. It was small and crumpled. "Open it," she said. And then before he could unwrap it, she told him what it was. "It's a tie pin," she said. She was smiling and excited and happy. "But I ain't got a tie," Ginger answered. And then he suddenly stopped. "You ain't blowed that shilling, have you?" he asked. Sweetie avoided his eye. "It's gold," she said. "It was 6pence. But Ginger wasn't listening. With the half-shilling spent, he was wondering where breakfast and dinner and tea and supper were coming from. But you've still got the other shilling," Sweetie reminded him. "No, I ain't," Ginger told her angrily. "Only 6pence. The other 6pence don't belong to me. I borrowed it." "Oh, I see," Sweetie answered. "I didn't know." She paused. "I only did it 'cause you gave me the brooch." "But I didn't pay nothing for it," Ginger pointed out. He now saw that he should never have trusted her with the shilling. It wasn't safe to trust other people with your money, not girls at least, and certainly not Sweetie. Slowly he counted out what was left. There was the shilling, of which only a 6pence was really his, and there was a penny left over from the shilling which had paid for the supper and breakfast. "We've got a shilling and a penny," he said at last, "and we've got to eat." Sweetie knew that she was in disgrace, and she wanted to make Ginger pleased with her again. "I'm not hungry," she replied promptly. "Really, I'm not." But Ginger wouldn't listen. "Gotta eat," he said stubbornly. "It's balmy not eating." But as it happened, eating didn't prove quite so expensive as he feared. Apparently they did things very cheaply and sensibly up Doncaster way. Fish and chips, for instance. He blamed himself for not having thought of fish and chips before. But he really didn't know much about eating out, at least not as much as he wanted Sweetie to think he did. He was only now getting round to studying the menus and the price lists. He and Sweetie stood for some time consulting this one. There were things like plaice and rock salmon for people who were giving themselves a real blowout with money that was no object. And then there were cheaper items like fish pieces, threepence. All the best of it was chips, a penny. Ginger finally decided, and going inside, he ordered tuppennyworth. You could tell from the smell of the place how good the food was going to be, and it was very nearly as satisfying as a meal, simply standing there washing your lungs in it. The shop provided their own newspaper too, and there was no trouble about plates or anything. Ginger and Sweetie went back to the spot on the canal bank where they'd eaten lunch. There was no particular reason for choosing it. There were plenty of other places, but it was pleasant, picnicking memories about it, and they felt somehow they belonged there. It was very important when you are on the run, that feeling that you belong somewhere. It gives you assurance. But it was dark now, and cold. Little wisps of grey mist came reaching up from the surface of the canal, and they shivered. "Don't let's eat here," Sweetie whispered. "Let's go under the lamp." It seemed warmer under the lamp, and it was a good meal, even though there was no lemonade to wash it down with this time. But Ginger felt better about things in general. With chips so cheap, he reckoned that he and Sweetie could just about last out. Again, he began boasting. "When I get me pay," he said, "I'll get you a proper room somewhere. We only got to wait a week. Then I'll get you a better job, something regular." "I'll get a job too," Sweetie told him. "Oh, then I can get a job, something regular." I'll get a job too," Sweetie told him. "Then we needn't worry at all." Ginger had licked his fingers clean by now and was reading the paper the chips had been wrapped in. It was a clean sheet, crisply torn from the noon edition, and he was reading carefully and laboriously through a paragraph that was staring up at him. "Runaways in Doncaster," it ran. "Two inmates, a boy and a girl, from the Archbishop Bodkin Hospital in London were reported missing last night. A local snack bar proprietor reports seeing two boys, one of whom answered the police description, early this morning. The other boy appeared rather girlish, and it is probable... ... The rest was torn off, but Ginger had read enough. He passed it to Sweetie. "You read that," he said. Sweetie looked serious. "That's us," she told him. "Then we've got to get going," he said. "We can't stop here. We've got to get going now." And we're on chapter 46. And we may stop there. I know it's just gone 1:45, but this is a long chapter, and I don't want to start it because obviously these chapters are slightly all part of one thing, and I don't want to break it up. But there we go. How about that? Oh, Sweetie and Ginger are on the run up in Doncaster, but they've been rumbled and they've got to go. Yes, rumbled. So there we are. Yes, a virtual party. With the sale of one house and his son, the partner moving out of the other, I smell a party. Online, of course, says Holly and Co. Oh yes, a virtual party. No, Julia, probably buy more filming gear. Yes, that's true. Buy more filming gear, obviously. A party sounds good. Absolutely. Yeah, well, last night I was lying in bed and I heard this dripping after all this rain and wind. I thought, no, that's the money gone then. I've got to get the roof fixed. I know someone who does brilliant one-man shows, says Lee Lawson. Oh, yeah, with a beanbag. What, up in Scotland? He could bring his own beanbag. I'll bring the cider. Rumbled. How exciting for tomorrow. Brilliant so far. Good reading. Thank you very much, Ed. Cheers, everybody. It's a good book, isn't it? I love that book. I love it. It's very nice. And then there's more Norman Collins that we can read later on, although we've got some other books to read before all of that. Good to have a change. But there we go. Thank you very much for joining me today. Hopefully see you again tomorrow. And we'll continue with this rather remarkable story, hopefully without all the issues. I'm going to ring my sister now to make sure that she's okay. And should all be good. Anyway, look after yourselves. Thanks for coming along, and I'll talk to you very soon. No Vogue show tonight. I've got a lot of party planning to do. What new camera should I buy? What champagne should I get? Anyway, till then, take care. Thanks very much, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye for now. Bye-bye.